The South African government says it's puzzled at the UK's decision to keep South Africa on the red list of countries facing stringent restrictions and high costs when entering the UK. The UK government on Friday announced that 8 countries, including Bangladesh, Kenya and the Maldives, will move from the red list on September 22, and the rules for international travel to England will change on the 4th of October. The Department of International Relations and Cooperation here says thousands of families and businesses will, in South Africa and the UK, suffer. They're shocked at the exclusion, especially because South Africa's progress in combating the COVID-19 pandemic, as evidenced by the rapid decline in infection rates due to the robust vaccination program and excellent science. We're joined now by Professor Shabir Mahdi, who's a vaccinologist and public health expert, to talk to us about this. Professor Mahdi, a very good evening to you. Thank you so much for speaking to us. So the UK cites the Joint Biosecurity Centre for its stance. What data is coming out of this body in order to influence this decision?
Good evening. So I think the decision by the UK certainly is irrational. It doesn't speak to any scientific data which merits South Africa being treated any differently compared with Pakistan, Kenya, Bangladesh as an example. The only difference is that South Africa has got much more robust data when it comes to the trajectory of the pandemic, as well as when it comes to the sequencing of the virus compared with many of the other countries. The absence of data doesn't infer the absence of mutation as an example. Where South Africa has been able to quantify it, many of the other countries simply haven't got the resources to be able to actually see what is happening in those countries. So for this sort of a decision, there simply isn't any scientific merit which underpins the rationality of this particular decision.
So just typically what comes out of it? We've just mentioned South Africa's vaccination program, and we know that from the very beginning when we're doing trials, etc., there was this view that there is a shortage of data, but that has been shared more and more. It's becoming more widely available. So why would the UK pick on particularly African countries? We mentioned the fact that this has been labelled as racist, to say that they should remain on the red list, but be considered more than anything unvaccinated.
Yeah, so it's not obviously singling out African countries, because a country such as Kenya is being allowed to undertake travel. So again, it's really difficult to comment on a decision which is simply not in any way founded by science. So this, again, to reiterate, there's absolutely no reason why South Africa should be on a red list, and many of our neighboring countries, including a country such as Kenya, is not on a red list. Because at the end of the day, having a vaccine passport would pretty much mitigate any sort of concern that the UK might have with regard to the importation of a variant which might have arose elsewhere. At the same time, I think it's important to realize, and I think South Africa itself was guilty of it at the end of the first wave and sometimes during the course of the second wave, when South Africa also had a red list of countries that included the UK as an example as part of that red list. And at that stage, I myself indicated that having those sort of lists is really a meaningless exercise. It doesn't prevent the importation of a virus. And I think in the instance of the UK, where as an example, they're allowing travelers from Kenya, those very same travelers might have been present in South Africa, and a few weeks later end up in the UK via Kenya. So there's absolutely very little that the country can do to try to prevent the importation of variants, if that is the reason why the UK has gone this route. But the other problem with the UK decision is that they're still premising the decision based on the belief that the beta variant is dominating in South Africa. And that is completely outdated information. The variant that dominates currently in South Africa is the same variant that dominates in the UK. And that variant seeded in the UK most likely because of travelers from India. So again, it shows that you're simply unable to prevent the importation of these sort of variants into your country, irrespective of what measures you put in place.
So, Professor Mahdi, there's the fact that the richer countries knew all along which vaccine doses were being donated or procured for Africa. The National Institute for Communicable Diseases here said that the South African Health Products Regulatory Authority had approved AstraZeneca, Pfizer and J&J vaccines. And as you say, there have been different variants or variants of interest that have come up as well. So why hold Africa and other countries to different standards?
Yeah, I don't think it's about which vaccines are being used, because the Pfizer vaccine that's used in South Africa, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine that's used in South Africa, is no different from the vaccines that would be used elsewhere in terms of its effectiveness. I think one of the concerns which has been proposed as being a reason why the UK has gone this route is they're less confident about the validity of information that would come from South Africa as to whether people are vaccinated or not. Again, which is an incorrect assumption, because with the EVDS system that's in place, it certainly would be easy to have formal documentation as to whether someone has received the vaccine that they meant to have received in South Africa and not perhaps some sort of dummy vaccine. So again, it's really difficult, as I said, to comment on a decision which is simply irrational.
Thank you so much for sharing your insights, though. Thank you very much, Professor Shabir Mahdi, who is a vaccinologist.